two people secretly entered a cave to dive. As they swam further inside, they suddenly noticed lights deep in the pitch-black cave. But strangely, the lights weren't moving at all. That's when a terrifying thought hit them, and they quickly surfaced. What you just saw was the beginning of what we'll discuss today: the Picaninny Pond cave diving incident. Located on the limestone coast of South Australia is a vast wetland covering around 862 hectares, Picaninny Ponds Conservation Park. At its heart lies a lake, or more precisely, a pond, where today's story unfolds. The water here is all groundwater, with levels rising and falling according to the seasons. Beneath the ponds, underground caves are commonly found. Picaninny Ponds is no exception. The cave system is divided into eastern and western parts and is mostly flat, with an average width, or thickness, of about 4 meters. The eastern section is relatively simple, with a large fissure about 10 meters deep, making it perfect for swimming and snorkeling. At the junction between east and west lies a narrow 2-meter deep waterway surrounded by reeds. Hence its nickname, the Reeds Area. West of this lies the main cavern known as the Chasm, a vast canyon. Further west is a zone called the Cathedral, the most popular area in the Picaninny Cave. Starting 30 meters below the chasm, the path becomes narrow and winding. Because its shape resembles a dog's leg, it's called the Dog's Leg. Visibility is poor here, and inside lies a massive rock shaped like a saddle. At around 60 meters deep, the passage narrows again. Divers call this the sand runway. Past this point, the space opens dramatically into a square-shaped chasm known as the crypt, with smaller chambers branching off it. The deepest part of the cave reaches 110 meters. The water in this cave is incredibly clear. Above 30 meters, you can easily spot aquatic plants and animals. Since its discovery in the 1960s, it has become a beloved spot for diving enthusiasts. But in the 1970s and 80s, diving equipment was less advanced, and cave diving knowledge was limited. That's when tragic accidents started to happen. The first fatal incident occurred on January 29, 1972. Lyle and his friend Philip visited the pond, having some diving experience but little knowledge of cave diving. They only filled 1/3 of their oxygen tanks. Entering from the east side of the first pool, they passed the fissure, the Reeds Area, and reached the chasm. They even made it to the famous cathedral. With oxygen running low, they began heading back. So far, things were smooth, and the experience was enjoyable, but perhaps too enjoyable. Because after surfacing, they decided to use the remaining air to visit the Turtle Pond. The Turtle Pond is shallow, no more than 4 meters deep, hiding several silt-filled tunnels beneath. After swimming through the reeds and into the silica pool, they discovered a 1-meter-wide tunnel on the bottom. Driven by curiosity, they went in. But after 5 or 6 meters, silt clouded the water, reducing visibility to less than 10 centimeters. Panicking, they turned back. To stay together, Lyle grabbed Philip's ankle, but then suddenly let go. Philip turned to find him but saw nothing. Fearing the worst, he surfaced to wait. But Lyle never came out. He dove back into search, but the poor visibility forced him out. Philip called the police. Hours later, Lyle's body was found just 3 meters from the exit, face down in the silt, feet floating near the ceiling, his tank empty. The cause, drowning. If they had brought more air or not impulsively entered the tunnel, the tragedy might have been avoided. On December 23, 1974, 2 divers from Western Australia, Brian and Claudio, attempted to explore the sand runway. Both had cave diving experience and had placed decompression bottles and guideline buoys ahead of time. After entering, they descended into the Dog's Leg, where visibility dropped drastically. They reached the saddle, an unexplored area below 60 meters. There, they hovered for 30 seconds, but could see nothing. Brian tapped Claudio's shoulder to signal it was time to ascend. Claudio checked his air and began to rise. until he realized Brian wasn't following. He turned to see Brian tangled in a rope. Claudio tried to pull him free, but failed. Running out of air himself, Claudio ascended without decompressing and called the authorities. Brian's body was later found 57 meters deep. His mask was loose, regulator fallen, lower body entangled in dark green ropes, his arms stretched upward, his expression frozen in fear, as if screaming. Yet oddly, his tank still had air, and his dive knife remained unused in its sheath. Neither diver had thought to cut the rope. Experts believe Brian's death was caused by nitrogen narcosis, a condition similar to alcohol intoxication that impairs judgment and decision-making at depth. After this, the park authority tightened restrictions. Diving was limited to 36.5 meters. For a while, this helped. But some divers ignored the rules, and that leads us back to the video's opening scene. On the morning of April 7, 1984, two friends arrived early to explore the Dog's Leg, but found another car already there. At 10:15 a.m., they entered the water and reached the Dog's Leg entrance. They saw a tank tied to a guide rope, suggesting someone else was inside. But on the way down, no bubbles were rising. At 45 meters, they saw faint, unmoving lights on the bottom, likely dive lights. Realizing something was wrong, but lacking enough air to dive deeper, they surfaced and alerted the police. Later, divers found two bodies below the saddle at over 50 meters. Both were tangled in ropes, tanks empty. The photos you see were taken during the recovery. They had reached 68 meters, the sand runway. It's believed one diver got caught in the narrow passage and the other perished trying to help. Like before, neither had used their dive knives. Police concluded nitrogen narcosis was likely the cause again. After the 1984 incident, the park enforced stricter rules. With improved equipment and safety protocols, no further deaths have occurred since. In 2008, the sand runway and deeper sections were fully mapped and visualized in 3D. Today, permits are required to snorkel or dive at Picaninny. These can be single-day or annual and are issued by South Australia's Park Authority. Diving is limited to 60 minutes per session, twice per day, with a depth cap of 36.5 meters. However, the official site currently shows the pond is closed due to an outbreak of filamentous algae. All water activities and permits are suspended to allow the ecosystem to recover. That's all for this video. Cave diving carries great risks. Be cautious, especially in underwater caves. Thank you for watching. See you next time.